so delighted to be joined by Magatte Wade. I don't know if many of you have come across her before, but I personally come across her. I came across her through a podcast she did with Jordan Peterson not too long ago, and I was inspired. I was excited to hear such a passionate voice on many of the issues that we actually touch upon in this podcast. So she's an entrepreneur and advocate for African dignity and prosperity. She has a TED Talk, which we'll link below, that has been viewed tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times. And it really asks, why is it too hard? Why is it so hard to start a business in Africa, and how we can change that? And we've been speaking on the podcast a lot about development and why certain problems within some African countries persist, who's responsible, what role does UK and America play in all of that? And I think I'm really delighted to be speaking to someone thinking very deeply and at the forefront of this conversation. And she has many awards, many amazing recognitions. As I said, we will link below. But firstly, I will say thank you, Magatte, for joining me.
And I say thank you, Inaya, for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Brilliant. So I think the first question I want to start off with was something that you are addressing in your TED Talk that, as I said, has been widely shared and widely discussed. How would you summarize? Because Africa is obviously a continent, various different ethnicities, different religions, different histories, and so on. But there does seem to be a shared sense that there are persistent, deep-rooted challenges within Africa, which is preventing the unleashing of the unbounding potential of many of these people. So how would you summarize the position that Africa as a continent is in at the moment?
Yeah, and Inaya, I think that because of that, I'm going to give us the permission to speak of Africa as a village for once, because we do look like a village, okay? And I know that people get all upset because like, Africa is not a village. And I'm like, if this is all you have left to argue, then you're really not thinking too far, right? And so the reason why I say that is because, look, if prosperity is what we are after, and I don't know for you, but for me, that's what I'm after. Okay. I think you have someone, our fellow brother, Remy Adekoya, who is based in London, I think UK as well. I love Remy's new book because he puts it in such a great way. The title of his book is called "It's Not About Whiteness, It's About Wealth." And he could not be more right. Wealth, we have to matter. Economically speaking, we have to matter. And it should not be about, well, everybody should matter because, normal life is... No. If we do not have economic weight, nobody's going to give a rat's ass about us. Excuse my bad words. So Remy totally got it. And I got it. You got it. So many of us get it. We have to get to prosperity, period. And so when it comes to prosperity, because I tell people the solution to poverty is prosperity, not poverty alleviation, as so many of the world likes to make it, and the economic development world likes to make it. The people who are working in development, do you hear them talk about prosperity? Most of the time it's about poverty alleviation. And that in itself is a problem. It's a fundamentally rotten problem. So the solution to poverty is prosperity. Who builds prosperity around the world throughout times? It's entrepreneurs. Okay. So because entrepreneurs start a business, create jobs, buy from suppliers, reinvest in the community that they're in, all of that good stuff. This whole flurry of activity is what we call the economy. And the more you have of these entrepreneurs, thriving, the more the economy is thriving, and eventually you build to prosperity. It's been the same phenomenon everywhere. There is no such thing as African excellence that we would be developing in a different way. That's nonsense. Okay. So solution to poverty is prosperity. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. Then what do we need for those entrepreneurs? Don't you think that as for anything that you want to flourish, you need the right environment? So which means you need a sane, healthy, friendly business environment to entrepreneurs so that they can start and run businesses. Well, when you look there, you realize that for all the economic indexes that measure how hard or easy it is to run a business, it is to start and run a business anywhere in the world. You have a Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank. You have a Fraser Economic Freedom Index, as well. And then a myriad of economic indexes measuring this very simple thing. And what do they all show? They all systematically show what it is that as an African doing business on the continent, I go through every single day. It is almost impossible to do a legal, meaning formal, business in these nations of ours. That's the reason why the businesses that you have in my country, and I'm not sure which country you are, Inaya, which one is yours?
So I'm British, but my heritage is Nigerian.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, same thing in Nigeria. We all, again, when it comes to this stuff, Africa becomes a village, especially sub-Saharan Africa. Most of the businesses in our nations, for an overwhelming majority of them, in my country, it's 97% of the businesses that are in the informal sector, meaning they're not legal businesses. And you cannot lead your way to prosperity when you have 97% of your businesses in the informal sector. It just doesn't work. Because you can't raise, when you're informal, you technically don't exist. You can't raise money. You can't get bank loans. Your employees don't exist technically. So they can't use their paychecks to go and, apply for rent an apartment somewhere or buy a home or any of the things that people around the world use when there are employees. They can take this piece of paper and it's worth a lot. They can trade, it for other things and keep elevating their lives. You can't lead yourself to prosperity with all the businesses being in the informal sector. But why are they in the informal sector? Because it is hard as heck to start a business and to run a business. So what these indexes are showing, that it is harder to do business in almost anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa than it is anywhere in Scandinavia. So this, my friends, is the reason why we are where we are. African nations are the nations in the world that offer their entrepreneurs on the ground the least economic freedom, the least freedom to enterprise. Our entrepreneurs basically have a leash around their necks, and it shows in multiple different ways. I'm sure we're going to details about that. I am sure Inaya will be going more into all the details of what do I mean by economic freedom? What does it all mean? What are these rules and regulations that stand in the way of our entrepreneurs and completely choke them to death so much that, most people are just saying, you know what, I'm definitely not going to build a business in these African nations. And for the few of us who try to do a business, most of us decide to stay in the informal sector. But it's not with a situation like that you're going to have, the thriving economies that we aspire to, but yet, only entrepreneurs can create.
There's lots to unpack there, and we're going to get into it. And I'm really happy that you mentioned Dr. Remy Adekoya, because he is a close friend of mine, and he is a dear friend of the Equiano project. And I know, so there's something I want to ask. I know that you address it somewhat in the TED talk, but I guess some people will listen to this and think, and I know this has become the big boogeyman question, but the question about corruption. Now, I know that, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. I want you to address it head on, because some people will say, well, for example, one of the ways in which businesses start is because they need to get, they might need credit, for example. They might need to get, a credit injection in order to really get the stuff that they need in order to start the business. And in order to have credit, you need those kinds of systems in place. And in order to raise capital, maybe people that would do that are not as trusting of the systems within certain African countries in order to manage that, in order to oversee that. So what do you say? Because even I think most people would agree that, of course, we want prosperity. We want people to be entrepreneurs, start their own businesses, create wealth. But that starting point of the systems in place, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I am very happy that you're bringing up this question. And actually, I would love for us to just bring up all these myths that we literally have to debunk, okay? So, why is Africa poor? So, by the way, if you line up 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, 1,000,000,000 people, and this is what the problem is, you ask them, why is Africa poor? Whether they're African or non-Africans, the usual suspect, like culprits are going to be racism, colonialism. They're stealing our natural resources, corruption, bad leaders. I hear it all. And yet, with a composed face, I say, does it play some little role in the fact that in today's Africa, we are still poor, we are still where we are? I think not. So let's take the corruption one. So people talk about corruption, and I think the two different types of corruption that we can think of, at least in our situations, are on one end, a leader, because really, I mean, seriously, these leaders of ours, basically selling us on the cheap, selling our natural resources on the cheap. They sell it on the cheap for way less than it's worth. And in exchange, they put most of the proceeds in their pockets and the pockets of their friends and families. So that's probably, I think, the biggest corruption that our everyday Africans are thinking about, the rest of the world is thinking about, when they're thinking corruption. And I say to them, that is a problem. It is a problem. But I will tell you why we should not still focus our efforts on that. It might be the easy thing to be mad at and be like, no. But I will tell you why. Two reasons for me why it's just, and then we'll talk about the other corruption. So the reason why, first of all, these people are doing what they're doing because they have an immense sense of impunity. There's so much impunity. They can do it because guess what, Inaya? Whether it's you in Nigeria, me in Senegal, other people in Malawi, who knows where else, most of our population is living in poverty. Is it not true? Do you really think that they have time to be thinking about the type of deals that are being made by our governments? Yeah, they'll complain about it maybe for a day or two, and it makes a big noise, and then we go back to normal because guess what? I just managed to find some breakfast. I'm going to have to work hard to see where my lunch is going to come from. Once I secured lunch, I need to think about where dinner is coming from. People who live like that simply don't have the time nor the mental bandwidth to even think about those issues. Are they more stupid than people in the West? No. Do they care do they care less about, what's going on in their countries? No. But they have basics to take care of. And that situation benefits the leaders. And the reason why they have these basics to take care of is because we're poor. We go back to poverty, aren't we? And so as long as we remain in this situation, and we have a tiny civil society, and we have almost no NGOs. We have almost, like how you see, you live in the UK. I am based in the US half of my time. We see it. How many think tanks do we have? How many nonprofits do we have? How many organizations do we have that you, me, and others, some people they give $10 to it, some people they give $10 million to it, but they're giving money to these initiatives that are actually just keeping an eye on what's going on, keeping an eye on the quality of the air we're breathing, keeping an eye on the type of curriculum that's being, taught in our schools. There are people all over. It's because this extra wealth we built went into these places, and they're in a way the watchdog, and then they find out things, and then they talk about it, and then us, the rest of the population, where most of us in the middle class, we have then, and we're this middle class, we have a roof over our head, food in our bellies, kids are in school, when they're sick we can send it to a doctor, because guess what, we have jobs, we have income, and we can take care of our basic needs. But now bring it on. What did you say they sold our oil for? Who did you say that they're invited to our country last time to look at our education system or whatever it is? You starting to pay attention because you have dedicated parts of our society. That's all they do. You see how we have all of these extra layers that are there to fight against that and win. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have, corruption in the West. When people say Africa is corrupt, I tell them, well, almost as bad as Chicago. Next, right? So the thing is, we probably don't see so much in our face because they know better than to act with such impunity, because they're dealing with people who have time to pay attention to what they're doing and can undo what they're doing, and their political jobs are at stake. So you see, we have people who have plenty of time and money to look after themselves. And so as long as we stay poor, this corruption will remain. How do we not be poor anymore? We unleash our entrepreneurs. So that's for that type of corruption. It is never going to go anywhere unless we build our middle classes and we have a much stronger society from that standpoint, and us just raising our fist in the air, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. We've been doing it for the past 60 plus years. Nothing is changing and nothing is going to change. I guarantee you that, if this is the only strategy we have, because no one cares about poor people, because technically poor people have no voice. Okay, so that's on that for that corruption. Then the other type of corruption is when you get stopped on the road going from point A to point B. How many times you get stopped? I can tell you that for me, on a 60-kilometer stretch, it can go from 5 to 10 times that we get stopped. And every single time you're giving like a little, almost $2 worth, putting it into the, we give a 2000 SEFA. So that's roughly 4.5, 5, depending on the rate. Each time, boom, boom, sometimes 1,000. It depends. They look at your car, what it looks like. The riggedy and raggedy your car looks like, the lower they will take. But, there's also even there like a scale. So when the policeman who stops you, you go to the passport office trying to get your passport. Normally there is a rule as to how things go. But at every single step of that process, you need to maybe bribe somebody for things to go faster, when it is your citizen's right to have your passport. But you pay the normal fee for the stamp, all of those things, and still your file is at the bottom of the file because somebody is waiting to be paid to move it forward as it should be. The corruptions we're talking about, this type of corruption too, in there you can put the fact that because, at least in my country, when you're bringing in some raw material or packaging products for your, for the product that you're making, and it's going back to international, the tariffs are 45% when it gets to port, and for some of them you have to pay close to 70%. When the tariffs are so high, well, guess what? Most people. And then if you pay it, you become your product becomes non-competitive on the marketplace, because for every 50 cents you add to my COGS, to my cost of goods sold, you're basically making me raise my final price by $4 more in order for me to be competitive, in order for me to actually balance out my books. But for this is artificial, added cost, which the market is not going to be willing to bear. So because of that, I am non-competitive. Non-competitive because my product sucks, but because of all of these stupid, taxes that you put on it, right? And so, and there again, I tell people the culprit is the same thing as what happens to the entrepreneur, because this is all these sets of laws and regulation. If the laws were super clear about moving vehicle on the road, if the laws were, we didn't have, first of all, a million of them, and that they were super clear, do you think that the cops really would have something to stand on? Do you think that I would have somebody stopping me and saying, why do you have tinted glasses? This is real story. Well, because I wanted tinted glasses. Are you going to ask me why I married the man I married while you're at it? Okay. Well, to have tinted glasses, you have to have a special authorization from the Minister of Interior. Do you have such an authorization? I never heard of such a rule. But obviously it looks like it's a rule. And because of course I don't have it. Park the car. Of course I don't want to park my car and leave it there all day because I don't have this paperwork, or yet pay the crazy fee they want me to pay. So what most people do? Here. And that's what they're waiting for, here. So if you eliminated all of those regulations, you simplified it, each regulation is an opportunity for you. It's a reason for you to have to interact with the government official. You remove that regulation, there is no friction because you now move forward. So every rule you put means us, the citizens, have to deal with a government official. And every time we have to deal with a government official, it's an opportunity for them to require bribes for the process to keep moving. So their laws are our problem. So you see how, for me, both sides are just a symptom. It is not a cause. And we need to stop addressing cause when we're trying to fix a problem. And most of us Africans and the rest of the world are stuck when it comes to this at the symptoms level. And we really, really, really need to educate ourselves and stop just looking at that. Because while you're doing all of this, the reason why all of that is happening is right there. Nobody's addressing it. And we're just all wasting our time. We've been wasting our time since independences.
So I want to stick on this theme before we talk about next steps, but stick on this theme of myth busting, because it's interesting that you mentioned a lot of people still blame racism and colonialism. And what do you make of that? Because we hear that a lot in the West. We have people that not oftentimes actually it's not Africans that are been grown up in Africa. You'll have children of African immigrants that have never often traveled to an African country, and they will say, oh, the reason of the situation in African countries is because of imperialism, is because of the British, etc. So what do you make of those arguments as to the reason why?
Yeah, I mean, I make of these arguments that we're basically spewing things that we've been taught. We're spewing things that we've been told, right? And we're being lazy thinkers. That's pretty much what it is. When we're even trying to think, we're being lazy thinkers. I'm one of those people, and this is where I would recommend for people to really read Remy's book, because Remy's book is amazing when it comes to that. But I'm just going to take people down to my own level. Africa is poor because of racism. Does racism exist? Yeah. But do you think it's going to stop me? Do you really? I mean, are we saying that we're going to wait for racism to be over with in order for us to move forward? Because if that's what I'm hearing, then we might as well just go and shoot ourselves. And by the way, I'm not telling us to literally shoot ourselves. What I mean by that is we might as well all just give up and accept that we're going to be a subclass for the rest of our lives. And that to me is a non-starting proposition, value prop. It just doesn't work. Especially when I know that there is so many things we need to do that we haven't done before we can call it a quit. Before we can say, well, we are poor because. And here I take us back. If you're going to tell me you're poor because of racism, I tell you, no, we're not. And I'll take an example. The Chinese. I think very few people realize how, especially if you look at the Chinese, the way they were viewed in the US. But it was not just the US, it was in the rest of the Western world. Inaya, you and I grew up in a world where the Chinese were not always this respected. When China was not always this thriving. When China was not always this prosperous, the powerful nation that it has become. The Chinese people were disrespected around the world. And that was the case as long as they were poor. So if poverty meant they could never reach prosperity and power in the world, that doesn't fly, because the Chinese have moved on. They have changed their circumstances. And I don't think they changed the circumstances because the world became less racist against the Chinese. I think
it's a good point. It's an important point. India is as well.
India, same thing. India, same thing. And I think what happened instead is because they managed to move themselves to being economic powers. That's why the interactions from the rest of the world with them is changing. And today you might still not like the Chinese if you don't like them, but you sure cannot disrespect them. It's just something, they just command respect. Period. So you can dislike the things and say, oh my God, it's terrible what they're doing. And they're doing a lot of terrible things. Do not take me wrong. But these are people that you're going to have to account for. And these are people that you're going to have to work with. And you're going to have to do it in a way that also works for them, because you're no longer going to be able to bully them. You see, poor people is who you bully. You don't bully another power. But so they understood, let's get ourselves to a state of being economically powerful. And the way they did that, both China and India, and before them Singapore, and yes, I will use Singapore, and I will explain that later, because then you have, well, how could you compare a country million people who didn't have the same type of colonization that we had, who didn't get ripped of their, culture as we were done. So it's like, really, seriously, guys, I mean, come on. What I see people who look for every single occasion not to get off their butts. Because it is so much easier to complain and to scream and to be like, oh my God, the world is doing us wrong. Well, if that's where you want to be, you stay right there. You'll be thanking the rest of us later. Thank you very much, because I know we're on the right track with what we're doing. I have no time for this crap. Okay? So anyway, so we go back. China, India, they got it. They're like, if we want to be respected in this world, we better make our asses be, counted for. And the way that's going to happen is we're going to have to matter in the world. And the way we matter in the world is, economically speaking, we better have some weight. And the way we're going to do that, so this communism that we are working with, fine, we can keep it on the social realm, fine, but when it comes to building prosperity, it looks like capitalism is beating our asses, isn't it? It looks like the free market is winning everywhere, isn't it? So even communist China jumped onto the bandwagon of economic freedom, of the free markets. And they went on to create these SEZs, special economic zones, which are among the most free market zones in the world. In these zones, what they have done de facto is allow for businesses to be quickly started, quickly, ran without intervention from the government, so much. And this is what basically caused the China metamorphosis. Basically, China, in a very short amount of time, lifted 800 million plus people out of poverty in a blink of an eye when you look at human time. This is unheard of, but actually it is heard of, because this has been the story of the free markets. Everywhere they have been tried throughout time and throughout places. So the Chinese, when they were tired of being disrespected due to the poverty, they did something about it. They embraced business environments where entrepreneurs can enterprise. The Indians are doing right now the same thing, and India is starting to see the changes as well. But us Africans, we are stuck with these governments and these policies. So this is why I don't complain about the leaders. Most of our leaders are out to lunch. We have no idea what the heck is going on. As long as they keep putting the money that they loot from foreign aid and also from selling our resources on the cheap, they're happy. They live in a happy world. That's it. Do I expect them to change? And do I think I'm going to wait for them to change? You betcha I'm not. We're going to be building forces that are actually going to get them in a position where they're going to have to do the right thing, not because they want to, but because there's no other option. And it's not going to be with putting a gun to their heads. No one is going to put a gun to their heads. This is why I love the free markets. We can do this in a different way, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure. So this is why when you tell me racism is the reason why we're there, I call BS. I call it BS. Okay? And we need to stop wasting our time with that excuse as to why we are where we are. The sooner we let that go and get to work with what we should be doing and are not doing, because the Chinese changed their ways, the Indians changed their ways, economically speaking, they said we're going to adopt the free markets, have freer markets. We Africans have not done that. We're still where we are. We never questioned our socialist, colonialist, past. And then we wonder why we are where we are. But for anybody who's listening, socialism has never bred prosperity anywhere it's been tried. Show me one socialist nation that has made it. Show me one, I'm waiting for it. And please don't come up with your Cuba this and your Cuba that. Have you looked at what's going on in Cuba lately? I mean, really, seriously, is that your example? So I say we throw the books out from, from Rodney, Frank Fanon. All of us guys we have to take those books and do this with them. Unless, you can really, and seriously, and then open the books from people like Professor Ayite, George Ayite of Ghana. We need to hear from people like that. They're the ones who really got it. So we need to stop wasting our time with people who have spent all of his time writing books and, one misguided idea after another. And clearly that crap has not gotten us anywhere. So I say we stop, and can we again come back to, if we mean prosperity, if prosperity is our solution forward, then we have to go back and look at the business environment. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but in the face of what we're facing, between all of this nonsense as to why we're poor, still poor 60 some plus years later, this is nonsense. And you know what? Another thing, Inaya, is so you line up 1,000 people, you line up 1,000,000 people, you line up 1 billion people, and you ask them all, African, non-African, ask them why we're poor. I told you, the usual suspects. Racism, colonialism, they're stealing our resources, our leaders are corrupt, they're stealing. You hear it all. But do you know what I don't hear? Do you know what I don't hear? From the African who is stuck in victimhood mentality and their white liberal friends who comfort them in victimhood mentality. Same way facing off with racist, sometimes racist for the most, racist people facing off with them from both sides. I hear all types of this. Then they're going to come up more with the IQ theory. You guys are savages, always fighting each other. You're dumb, you're lazy, all of that stuff. So I hear all of these reasons as to why we're still poor. But do you know what I don't hear, Inaya? None of these people brings up the fact that Africa is the region in the world where it is the hardest for entrepreneurs to enterprise, because Africa is the most overregulated region in the world, which means our entrepreneurs are choking to death and cannot build legal, formal businesses as easily as any other entrepreneur does around the world. I don't hear any of them saying that. But that's the right diagnosis of why we are there. If you don't have a right diagnosis, how do you expect to get to the right solution? I ask you.
No, it's very powerful stuff, very powerful stuff. And, we very much strongly resonate with what you're saying, Magatte. I guess for moving on to that point in the last bit of our podcast, and moving on to the question of solutions. So before we get into what solutions can happen led by Africans within Africa, obviously the primary listeners are a British and American audience of this podcast, and many people, they see the plight and they feel helpless, because if they do something, they're told, oh, that's neo-colonialism, or if they give money, then people, as you mentioned, oftentimes aid goes to doesn't go to the people that most need it, and if they don't do anything, then people think, oh, you're just you're letting, this is a moral catastrophe that you're just turning a blind eye to. So before we go into what Africans in Africa do, what can Westerners living in the West who want to help unleash the potential of Africa what can they do, if anything?
I'm very glad you asked, and you don't have to separate the question in what can Westerners do and what can Africans do. This is where also I'm going to be pushing back. Okay, so we obviously are going to have to be the main architects of of the change that we seek for, right? But when it comes to the change that we seek for, I welcome all contributions, as long as they're contributions that are actually supporting the solution. You see, when this is something that also I really want Africans to really think about, because when I hear them always pushing back on this idea that this world should be divided between what skin color you have, what gender you are, that is pure nonsense. The world I live in, I don't look at you based on your skin color. I look at you based on, I see your skin color. And I think it's a beautiful skin color, Inaya, by the way. Like mine is beautiful as well.
Likewise.
Somebody else is beautiful. And I say, yes, and we got to go beyond. You're black, beautiful, great. And so let's keep going beyond, because that doesn't tell me everything I need to know about Inaya. Inaya is unique. She's very, a very sophisticated person. There's so much that I need to discover about her, and I definitely should not put her in a box. So the world I live in, I don't separate people based on melanin levels. I look at who is being productive, non-productive, who is toxic, non-toxic, who is showing up for the good, and who is showing up to do harm. That's more along those lines, that I judge you. I guess there I go back to what, Dr. King was looking after. I'm looking for character. I live in a world where I look at people and I judge people based on their character more than ever, honestly. And so your skin color really should have nothing to do in this. Are you somebody, all I care about is, are you someone who believes in Africa? Do you believe in Africa and in the future of Africa? And do you believe that Africa is the poorest region in the world because it's the most overregulated region in the world? Entrepreneurs are not free to enterprise, and we need to change that. We need to free them, because when we do, then they go on to build these businesses, to build this wealth, to build this prosperity, and then countries move from being poor or low income nation to middle income nation to then voila, you became a prosperous rich nation, right? The entrepreneurs, that force is what does it. So I'm looking for people who are saying that, people who are saying, I believe in Africa. I care about Africa. I believe it's only right that Africa makes it. And the way Africa is going to make it is we have to free her entrepreneurs as well, like we have done anywhere where where nations have become rich. That's all I'm looking for. If you believe in that, you belong to my world. And the world we are building is called the Cheetah Generation. It's a movement. So Cheetah Generation is not about your skin color. It's not about are you African or non-African. It's not about do you live on the continent or don't live on the continent. Because we also make these differences. Oh, you guys are diaspora. You see how now even people on the ground try to keep us out? They're like, hey, Africa. I'm sure you're hearing it. Sometimes it's like, Africa is for us. You guys are. It's like, anyway. So I digress. Doesn't matter your skin color. Doesn't matter you're African, no African. Doesn't matter you live on the continent or not. If you believe in what I just talked about, you belong to the Cheetah Generation, because it's about the mindset. And it's a mindset I described earlier. If you're that person, come on over. And for each one of you, there is a job. There is a role in this. And if you come and you tell me that you are, I don't know, you work, even the people who are in the nonprofit world. You see, I complain about the NGOs, but the type of NGOs I complain about are the ones who are not working towards productivity. I really have a problem when somebody is giving a fish rather than focusing on, it's fine today, this person is dying. First order of business is to feed them so they don't die. Of course. But if this is where the thinking is going to stop, or where all of us are going to operate from, then we're doomed. Because if everyone is focused on the immediate, need and short-term need, when 80% of our resources, time, people are working on this immediate need, and only 20% of us are working on short to long-term solutions, when, Inaya, do you believe we're going to be in a position where we don't have any more people that we need to feed every single day? And this is my problem with the aid industry as we know it. And I'm even there putting aside foreign aid, government to government aid. That's a whole nother one. That one I rejected almost all the time. But humanitarian aid, of course, I don't condemn humanitarian aid, but when it becomes chronic, I have a problem, and we have addressed it in such a way that it now has become chronic. We're constantly having to save people from immediate death, literally, because no one focuses on the long term. How are we going to make sure that this person tomorrow does not need us to stay fed? No, we're not thinking about that. So that's my issue. But if you have a nonprofit who is working on how do I make sure this person can help themselves tomorrow? I'll give you an example. In Rwanda, you had this organization called the Aspen Institute. They do amazing work. Aspen Institute, I've always been a big fan. Do you know what they did? They basically looked at Rwanda and they're like, wow, Rwanda is really looking at being a very tourism-oriented nation. It's going to be part of their ways to getting to the next level. And so they noticed that between the genocide, so many people have been killed, and also just for the tourism to really work, they needed enough people trained at a certain level of hospitality, knowing the hospitality business, people who knew how to make beds, how to, man in the kitchen, the trays, all of that stuff. When you go to a nice restaurant and all the things you expect, and how you expect the staff to be really, there and caring for you and all of that stuff, how your bed well made, all of that stuff. So they train people. And you know what? They have systematically almost like a 100% placement rate. So you see, this NGO is there to teach people skills that they can then use to actually enter the job market. And once they have a job, they get their job means income. That income means now they can take care of their needs. They don't need you, me, to give them a fish. They don't need you or me to send them to a doctor when they're sick or to help them with the school fees for the kids. They take care of everything, just like the guy who has a job here in America does. It's the same. So we don't. So if you're an NGO and that's more what you're working towards, or like Seed Academy. Seed Academy is an academy in Senegal. My friend Amadou Galofal of the NBA, he decided basically to have this school. It's a boarding school in Senegal where he basically looks at the kids, usually from like the urban areas and also very poor backgrounds, for most of them. But he's seeing, hey, you seem to have really good basketball skills. And so come over here at our school. We're going to keep you up on your basketball, capabilities. But at the same time, we're really going to focus on your academics as well. So by the time they get to the end of high school, then we can use that to actually get them scholarships to come to the US. And when they come to the US, they come on a basketball scholarship. But really what they're getting is two things. A possibility to work to be in the NBA. And right now, almost all the Black African people you see in the NBA come from this program, by the way. And if you don't make it to the NBA, because many people won't, it's just, the nature of it, but it doesn't mean you're less than. If you can't make it there, then you have your education to fall back on. It's a win-win. People like that, I'll give to them everything that I have because it's work. They're doing good work. The school we have in Senegal, same thing. It's another one focused more on digital skills and things like that, but same thing. So I am not saying, oh, I hate, nonprofit. It's not what I mean. We just need to keep our eye on the ball because if you believe what I just said earlier, you said, I believe in Africa. I believe Africa is going to get there thanks to entrepreneurs being able to enterprise. Then I'm going to do everything that I can do to really support entrepreneurs. I support them as grown people, and I also support them, even the people maybe that can work for them. We're trying to make sure we can help maybe the employees these entrepreneurs are going to need, or themselves, the entrepreneurs who start a business, or the kids, making sure we bring them up in a manner that they're going to be thinking entrepreneurially. So we're serving this cause. And so that's what I mean. So for everybody really here has a role. Everybody has a role. Just think about what you've been doing or what you should be doing. Think about it differently. Think about how can I contribute to creating more productivity. If you're an investor, think about the type of businesses you can invest in Africa. If you're working in the policy sector, think about the laws and the regulations that you can act, reforms on. If you're a politician on this side, on that side, or the other side, look at these ideas we talked about and see also where you can start to take off some of these stupid regulations and some of these senseless regulations. Kick them out, change them, do what you need to do. If you're an educator, can you work maybe with some schools back in Africa, or start schools where you're going to be it's going to be more like entrepreneurial type of schools, or something very stupid but really helpful, especially in Francophone nations. Can you teach these kids how to speak English so they can be plugged into the global world? That's what I'm talking about. And for that, there's a role for everyone. But my most ultimate solution is the startup cities. These are next generation special economic zones with their own law and governance when it comes to business. What we're doing with this is we are in nations that are right now running on the worst software for business environment, because we need to look at the law as technology. And right now, most African nations are running on the worst technology possible. They weren't running on the worst software possible when it comes to entrepreneurship and when it comes to business building. And so our goal is to bring that environment that the Scandinavian entrepreneur gets to enjoy because they live in Scandinavia, that the American entrepreneur gets to enjoy because they live in America, that the UK entrepreneur gets to enjoy because they live in the UK, or they found a way to get to the UK, which is what most of us are doing. I know Nigeria, people are japa all the time, right? Us, we're like in the boats all the time trying to leave our countries. And when we come to countries like this, we thrive, most of it for them oftentimes. And so the thing is here, we need to take what has caused these countries to succeed, which is the business environment. It is now proven everywhere. We need to take that technology and bring it to people on the ground. And so the way that works is on a piece of land, on a country, You look at a piece of land where there is almost no one there. People decided this place is not working, blah, blah, blah. So they left. But on that piece of land, we work with the government to say, here, we're going to put better business laws. And let's see what happens, which is exactly what the Chinese have done, by the way. So this is why I say, let's look at what Singapore has done. And they're over there being like, why do you want to compare us to a few million, a country of a few million people? I say, because that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to do it. China did it city by city. Before China, Singapore did it. Before them, Dubai did it. Dubai is just one region of UAE, right? And that's exactly also how we're going to do it. And by the way, as we do it that way, meaning almost like little city, nation state, like really small areas that you do one here, one there, and let people move into it if that's what they decide to do. If they don't think it's good for them, they don't have to go, but you're not forcing anybody. And so what we do there is, I'm thinking that at some point, even by doing it that way, we almost can recreate the traditional borders that the West has messed up with when they cut us up like a pie. And which is causing today so many tribal conflict, ethnic conflicts, because we've been separated along artificial lines. So as we do these type of cities, we can almost also actually recreate the natural boundaries of back in the days. And then people keep on moving back and forth from one area to another like we used to back in the days before the white man even ever set foot on the continent. So this is a much more complicated thing, but that's definitely what I'm developing much more, talking to people much more. When I first started with this, I was talking to one country. Now we have 4 countries that are basically competing for this to come to their country. And my point is, this is why I'm so bullish on Africa. This is why I'm so bullish on our future, because we know this stuff works. And the good news is we don't have to get all 54 nations or 55, depending on how you count, to get on board. All I needed was one country, one person with enough kahunas and vision to say, let's do this. We would do that. And if the magic happens, which I know it will, because time is on my back, time is on my side, it's been proven time and time again to work. If this works, everybody else replicates. And this is how Africa becomes prosperous in 25 years, in our lifetime. This is it. This is it.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much, Magatte Wade, for your powerful words, your passionate ideas, your important solutions, and we hope that we can at least make a contribution to spreading many of the things you say further and wider. Yes, buy this book. We will link it into the description. Thank you so much, Magatte. Is there where can our listeners get your work? Is that we'll put all your links in social media feed, but where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, my website, magattewade.com. If not, on social media everywhere, I am at Magatte W. That's it. So MAGATTEW. That's me on social media. If not, magattewade.com, and I'm there. And reach out.
Fantastic.
We're gonna have an app with for the cheetah generation. Reach out. We designed it to be really interactive. This is a place where we're gonna want people to go to every single day, and there's gonna be a give and get section. What do you need? What do you need help with? Also other people will also be putting. This is what I have to give as well. So give and get. This is a place where the goal is really gonna be to try and we need to be in a productive mode. I'm sick and tired of this whole victimhood. So let us build. It's going to be fun. This is going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy our videos, why not leave a like and hit the subscribe and notification bell so you make sure that you do not miss an episode.